How do you know when you need an executive coach? Our guest today is Antonia Bowring. She is a highly credentialed top New York executive coach and works primarily with founders, C suite executives, and leadership teams. And today we're going to talk about her new book, Coach Yourself, as well as ADHD in the workplace, communication best practices, and how to know if you need to coach yourself or hire an executive coach. Really excited to have her here today. Antonia, welcome to the Leaders Transformation.
Nicole, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, before we start, I do want to do a shout out to Smith Publicity and the team there because they
Mm,
introduced us, and I always like
that's right.
thanking those that support this show, and that includes
Oh,
all of the booking agents. And so, thank you for that. And of course, our listeners and our viewers, we're just glad you're here and hope that you find this very valuable and insightful. Our conversation here today. So, Antonia, let's just dive in. First of all,
yeah.
great book. I saw the title "Coach Yourself," I thought this is going to be good, and it did not disappoint. I
Mm.
was impressed actually by the number of coaching frameworks that you have put into this. It took a lot of time, I bet, to put this book together. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book.
Yes, yes. Well, I was not planning to write a book, and then the publisher contacted me, and I thought, okay, great. I'd love to write a book. What can I write about? And then I thought, well, executive coaching, which I am incredibly passionate about, is quite elitist just by nature of its pricing. And I thought I would love to democratize executive coaching. And one way to do that is to share my go to frameworks. And the frameworks in this book, and they're kind of grouped, and I can explain how they're grouped if you like, are really frameworks I use day in, day out. I use some of these frameworks with every single client I have. And I thought, all right, let me serve this up in a way that is helping someone who's passionate about their own professional development. Let me serve it up in a way that they can use this framework themselves to get over a bump in the road or take advantage of an opportunity or just really build up their own toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. And like I said, there are so many frameworks in there. And maybe talk a little bit about how you group them. And also, I know that core values as a starting point is important.
Yeah.
So maybe talk about how you tie that in.
Yeah. Well, the book has been out now, for about 4 or 5 months. And I was actually commenting to a colleague that if I was going to write that book today, would I do it differently? And there's no content in it I would change, but I literally think there are two keys to it, and the rest is an appendix. And core values is one, like, kind of cornerstone building block of coaching yourself. And the other is this spectator actor mindset. And if you really embrace both of those, let's call them frameworks, although, values are not really a framework. But if you embrace both of those elements, everything else is almost situational. You will pull on those tools depending on what's going on in your professional and, quite frankly, personal life. But those two are the key.
So I'm glad you brought that up because that spectator to actor mindset shift, I wanted you to talk a little bit about what that is.
Yeah,
Because when I was reading that, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is gold right here. And if you don't get that, it's kind of like all the rest doesn't matter.
doesn't
I mean, you can
matter.
talk strategy all day long, you can talk behavior modification all day long, but unless you get this,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna get the results. So yeah, talk about
Yeah,
that.
sure. Shall I mention the values
Sure.
first? Yeah, great,
Yeah.
because they do sort of flow. So the very beginning of the book, and both of those frameworks are in the first part of the book, are really sort of what I would call launch pad frameworks. So, what is it you need to embrace in order to successfully coach yourself? And the first thing is, I do this literally with every single client I have. I start with a values assessment. What are your values? Because those change over your life. In my opinion, they can. And I honestly do not know how someone creates a North Star, a long term goal, or long term objective if they don't know their values. And so that's the starting point. And for me, when I work with a client, I want them to first identify what they are. It's really easy to have a long list. It's really hard to have a list of five or less. And then the question I always ask, which is really for me fundamental, how do you activate that value? How do you activate it in your planning, your objective setting? And how do you live it every single day, both through your words, your mental mindset, and your actions?
That reminds me of a model from Tony Robbins that I love, and I use it with every one of my clients, which is the
Oh,
triad. And he talks about change your focus, change your words, change your state. And
huh.
so whenever something's going on, right, and somebody's frustrated or whatever, they're stuck, it's like, well, looking at, they're having a certain experience, and you look at it and you say, okay, what are you focusing on right now? And and then of course there's the words that are going to follow that. So I love this. And what you said about values, I think that's the key though, is the activation of it. Because a lot of companies will say, we got all these values, it's in the lobby, on our wall, people kind of know what they are, they're on the website and all that. But
Mhm.
how do you live those out? Because like respect, for example, there's a lot of different meanings to respect. Integrity, these are lovely words and valuable words, and yet
Mhm.
they can mean a whole lot of different things and create a whole lot of misunderstanding without some clarity around how do we actually apply those. So can you talk a little bit about how you get them clear on that piece of it, and then maybe even how they actually integrate that within a team?
Yeah. So when I'm doing a values exercise, it's the first thing I do with someone. So those become uh, those become words that we will refer back to throughout the coaching engagement. They almost become a sort of point of reference, right? And and I will encourage them not only to activate it daily, and some clients actually keep a little list of how they activate it, but also to use those words when you talk about yourself. So for example, I was talking to some students at NYU recently, and I was giving them a little like brand narrative, and I'm trying to remember now what I said, but I think I said something like, I'm a highly credentialed executive coach in New York City. I am passionate about my work and grateful every morning I wake up and get to do this work to be in service of others developing their potential. And I was like, I just used two of my values in that one line, gratitude, which is a core value. And it's more than one word, but in service of others is a second value. And so using those words when you talk about yourself is so powerful because that is also creating your brand narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you are really putting forth the brand that you want that is, of course, driven by your values. So I encourage clients to do that. In teams, a lot of teams have values. If we do some sort of working agreement, a team I'm working with, team values may be one element of that working agreement. Um, that's usually how values come up with the team.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's yeah, like you said, it's fundamental. And
Yeah.
I think about one of my values, which as you were describing that, I was like, that's so interesting because I've been using this maximize your potential and
Uh,
then for years. And you know, playing to your strengths and so forth. And then I did my strengths finder, and maximizer is one of my top 5 strengths. And I thought, oh,
really?
that's so interesting because that's a word that I was using before. So there are clues, right? So
Yeah, there are.
it's like the know thyself, right? Know who we are. And so talk about the spectator to
Yeah.
actor
Yeah.
mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this to me is, I mean, the short answer or word here is agency, right? And it is completely normal when something happens to look at it from the spectator mindset first. Oh, what just happened to me? Who did that to me? How could they? Oh, and another word for this framework is victim player. I don't use those words. I like spectator actor better. But oh, it's quite natural that that's our first reaction. Sort of poor me. Why is this being done to me? The the important part is that you move through that to, okay, what's my part in this? What did I do that caused this to occur? And okay, what am I going to do now? Because we all have agency, right? I may need to stay in a job I don't want to be in, but I have the ability to, in my mind, say, okay, this isn't maybe where I want to be, but I have a family and I take those responsibilities seriously. And I have made this commitment to the future of my family that I will provide for them. And I choose to have that mindset to help carry me through. And I want to be careful because there are people who I think very rightly talk about toxic agency, that, you know, individuals are completely responsible for whatever they do. And I don't mean agency in that sort of toxic way, but I do mean it in a way that I hope makes people feel empowered.
Mm-hmm.
That even if I'm stuck in a certain situation for a while, I can control my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we often have more agency, more optionality to take actions than we realize. And the starting point is also, what's my piece of this? You can't ever be a successful actor if you're always feeling that you're a victim.
100%. Reminds me of years ago, I worked with some lawyers
Oh yeah,
on a
I've done
project.
my share of that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was fun. I was actually literally I was an employee. I was hired to work on a project. This is 15, 20 years ago, something like that. And yeah, I guess 20 years ago now. And we were in a small firm, very entrepreneurial environment, and it was in the tax department. And so the whole tax department moved to a big firm. And the lawyers asked me and said, can you come with us? Because I was managing a lot of their clients and stuff. Can you come with us? And I said, absolutely. So here I am. I'm an entrepreneur. They hired me for my entrepreneurial skills and mindset. And I was very effective. And then now we're going to this big firm. We're going to be in this bureaucratic environment. So it's very different, right? So we get there, there's all the posturing going on, the office politics, and I'm like, oh, this is not my jam. Okay, I don't do drama and all that stuff. And I remember saying to myself, Nicole, if you don't change your perspective on this, you are not going to last.
Mm.
Now, granted, all that stuff was going on, but because I shifted the way I was showing up, it was amazing how those particular people that had issues and whatever going on, insecurities, how they shifted as a result of the way that I showed up, and I showed up differently, and I looked at it differently as an opportunity. And it was a great experience. I mean, I was there like 3 years, and I was like, I'm done. I do want to go out to my own thing again. Like I had a business on the
Yeah.
side, but it was kind of like, okay, this was fun, but I'm over it. But I left with a different perspective than I would have if I had left in the beginning, because I would have had a negative experience, and it would have been like the victim mindset or the spectator of they, all of these things, they, them were doing all these things, and, and didn't take responsibility. So I took responsibility for it, and it made all the difference. So, and you used another word there that I want to highlight, which is so important. You said choosing to do something. I chose to do something. A lot of times, I don't know if you notice
I
that with
love
your
that.
clients, is
I
this,
love that.
you hear, we say it a lot, right? I have to do this. I have to do meetings. I have to, and I did that for myself. I'd wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, I got to do all these meetings. I have to do these meetings today. And I'm like, Nicole, you scheduled your calendar. So if you don't
Yeah.
like it, change it. And so it's like, I chose that. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, just talk about that difference of have to and choosing to. It's huge as it relates to this
It's
mindset shift.
huge. It's huge. And it's funny. My passion project is I post on TikTok every day on ADHD. And something I've talked about a few times, I use a different word, but exactly the same thing. Instead of saying I have to do something, I get to do something.
Yeah.
I actually like choose even better, but I literally posted something about that. It might have even been today. How funny would that be? Or yesterday. I You go through your day and you think, oh, I got to do that. I got to do that. I have to do this. I have to do that. And then you go, no, actually, I'm going to use your word. I choose to do that. I get to do that. It's words matter, you
Yeah.
know? And,
It takes that obligation into and turns it into an
right,
opportunity, whether it's
right,
get to, because I'll use
exactly,
that one too, right? It's like, I get to, it's like a privilege. It's like, wow, I get to do this.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit riffing on that. I have a meditation practice in the morning, but I added on to it, 5 minutes before I get up, where I just set my timer for 5 minutes and I just lay there and I take 3 breaths and I sort of scan my body and I get to think, and I literally kind of go through my day and say, oh, I get to do X, I get to do Y. And if I'm feeling very ambitious, I'll set a sort of intention for the day, like a word. But it it's very fast, like under 5 minutes, but it I find it very, like, just sets me off on the right path for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I notice when I do that, where I'm like setting my intention for the day or getting just even thinking about my day from that opportunity standpoint, I'm actually motivated to get out of bed, because I'll do it while I'm still laying in bed. Whereas,
Yeah, me
sometimes
too.
like maybe it's been a long day or a long week before, the day before, and you're like, oh my gosh, right? It's like 6 a.m. And then you start thinking about these things, and it's like you can either want to crawl back in bed or stay there, or it's, oh man,
Choose.
I want to get up and I want to get to that. And that's a distinction that I think a lot of successful people maybe do it on autopilot, like founders,
Huh. Yeah,
startup people, they're excited. So they're like, yes, I'm getting to do this. I wanted to, turn this
right.
idea into a reality. And so I get to do it. And so that's so good. I'd love for us to shift gears and talk about
Yeah, yeah,
ADHD, because I know
yeah. Let's do
that you talk about in your book a
it.
lot about even your own experience with it. And I'll be honest, I am not a big fan of diagnosis and, and labeling people as a certain thing and so forth. But Because sometimes people use that as a crutch, right? Oh, well, that's just the way I am, yet at the same time, it's like we were talking about earlier, know yourself, know the things that you do and how you work and how you can actually use that, whether it is protecting yourself from yourself, which I've done
Mhm.
myself. It's
Yeah.
like, I know I'm going to do that thing, so let's reframe that, or protect myself from actually going down that path, and or to stay focused. So talk a little bit about your own experience and how you apply that to your coaching with people that
Yes.
have that.
Yeah. So I got diagnosed only several years ago. So typical. Um, my son also got diagnosed quite late as he was going into high school. And I remember thinking, oh, sounds like me. Huh. Anyways, it took me a couple more years and then I got the diagnosis. Um, I have to say that my dream would be that, you and I are on a team at work, let's say, and we're meeting, whatever, it's cross-functional team, and we're meeting, and it's like everyone's introducing themselves, and I say, yeah, I'm Antonia, and yeah, I have ADHD, and you say, oh, okay, Antonia, what kind of accommodations or what can we do to make this uh the best experience possible on this team? And like, I'm not, we just work that way because it is just a fact. Like if I said to you, yeah, I have hearing loss, and you would say, oh, okay, what can we do so that we take that into account when we're doing our teamwork?
Mm-hmm.
As just a fact, not it's a superpower, not it's a problem. It's just my brain is wired a little differently. And it's great you know that. And there's things you can do that will help. And also, I might require a little more patience in certain areas. That's
Mm-hmm.
my dream. That's my dream, that's the way we engage with neurodiversity in the workplace. Um,
And that's really about seeking to understand. So if we protract that out, it's really about understanding and supporting everyone in terms of what they need, rather
yeah,
than always looking at ourselves and what we need is to
yeah,
set aside, to be in service of, is to
yeah,
look at what others on the team need and make sure
yeah,
that everybody is supported and served. So yeah.
yeah. Like perfect example, and one that at this point, post COVID, most people are probably very familiar with. But it's very hard for a lot of neurodiverse people to be on camera all day. It exhausts them in a way that's different. It is. I did a weekend workshop of 2.5 days, on Zoom, and I mean, I thought I was going to die. I mean,
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
yeah, it was so horrible. I have to turn off my camera, and I, my desk was very organized by the end of that. But um, I think that when I think about ADHD, uh, I refer to it this way, that there are sort of two elements. There's the profound and the practical. And they both show up sort of all the time in different ways. And some days um, it might be something hits me that feels profound, or working through kind of understanding, like revisiting my past. There's some really profound pieces to that, because most adults diagnosed with ADHD, you carry a lot of shame, because you should be, or you expect or want yourself to behave and act a certain way like all those other people, and you just don't. And you're kind of, this little voice is always going inside you. Why can't I do that? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just do that? What's wrong with me? And you have that little voice going on in your head for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It has an impact. You carry a lot with that. So that's the profound piece. And it rears its head less for me now because I feel like I've integrated a lot, but still rears its head. And I feel disappointed sometimes in my behavior and feel shame about it and have to kind of have a little talk with myself about that. And then the other piece is the practical. We got to pay taxes, which is soon, right? We got to pay bills. We got to get work products in on time. We got to be organized in our homes with our families and take care of business at home. And so it's the self-awareness, the understanding of know yourself. How does it show up for you? Because it's different for lots of people. And then understanding and accepting that you need scaffolding, that you need support, that you need systems and strategies. And most importantly, knowing, or this is a personal piece of importance, that whatever system I have today, it's okay if that system doesn't work in a month. Because as a really great ADHD mentor coach I had said, folks with ADHD like sparkles, like variety, like change. We tend to have lower dopamine levels, and those sparkles get things interesting again. And it's fine if you change your systems, but have a system but it's okay if they change. That's great. Don't feel that's less than or failure.
Yeah.
I'm rambling on, but to
No,
me,
no,
that's
that's
the way I
that's
think
good.
about it.
And I think that a lot of people can relate. In fact, a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and a lot of
Higher, yeah,
entrepreneurs are
have it.
ADHD. In fact, even as you were describing some of those things, and I was kind of like stumbling over my words earlier about the protecting, it's like I protect myself with systems in a sense, because otherwise I could be off in some tangent, right? And it's like, how do I
Yeah,
keep myself focused and or allow myself and know how I work so that I work on shorter term
yeah,
projects and then I
yeah,
celebrate that project because I can also work so hard that like I've been called many times a machine where I can literally just go
yeah.
and then burn myself out
Monofocus
so
for sure.
monofocused. And then the other side, I can be like, oh, you know, walking through my house. I think I was reading something the other day. I
Yeah,
can't remember if it was in your book or somewhere, but I was reading something the other day and they were talking about going around your house, and you're like going to do one thing and then you see this thing
you
and so
do,
you do
yeah,
this
and
thing
then
and
you,
that
yeah,
thing and that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
do that
yeah.
all the time. I'm like
Me too.
I'm super like in terms of the maximizing, super efficient in the sense of like, well, while I'm going to the kitchen, I'll take this and do that and all the things. I get a lot done in a short period of time,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah,
because I have some certain systems around it, and
yeah,
maybe also because of the upbringing that I had, which was very
yeah,
structured. So, yeah, I
yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. Now, when we talk about this idea of coaching yourself versus getting an executive coach, I know there's also,
Mm.
like you just mentioned, a mentor, an ADHD mentor. How do people figure out what they need, whether they coach themselves, whether they hire an executive coach? And I'm going to add on to that, or whether or not if they think, well, maybe I do have, or maybe I've been diagnosed with ADHD, do I need a specialized coach to
Yeah,
support me?
yeah, that's an important distinction. So putting aside the coach yourself for a second, the I tell people that come to me, I am not an ADHD coach. I am an executive coach that layers onto that knowledge about ADHD and the lived experience of it, which I actually think is, I mean, you don't have to, but I think it's quite important just from a sense of ability to relate and understand.
Yeah.
And so I would say the majority of folks I coach who have ADHD face executive kind of level leadership management challenges that anyone has, whether or not they have ADHD. But the ADHD just layers on another level of complexity. And so that is executive coaching with an understanding of ADHD. An ADHD coach is more transactional. These are my words, they might disagree, but much more. There's a lot about accountability,
Okay.
a lot about, planning, productivity, and just accountability of holding them accountable for what they said they'd do last week and seeing what system worked, tweaking how they, moved through their week. They tend to see their clients more frequently, more check-ins, and obviously there are ADHD coaches who definitely deal with the transformational pieces as well. Um, that are not just about their to-do lists, that are about, because to me you have to do both. Like, you have to be able to let go of that shame, and you have to be able to sort of find an acceptance of who you are in order to, build off that base. So
Yeah.
does that
Yeah.
differentiate it?
Yeah, it does. And thank you for that. And I think about, yeah, the accountability to it's more accountability rather than actually business strategy or how they're
Yeah.
growing with their team. It's really more about how they're operating in the role and more of
Right.
a focus on how they're showing up, which is
Yeah.
also in other coaching, but it's specific to that
Yeah.
situation. So which
Yeah.
brings me
Yeah.
to actually the feedback the feedback and the habit loops that you talk about in your book. um Actually, before we go there, let's go back to that question about now
Yeah.
bringing back the coach yourself,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So coach
Yeah.
yourself, you know what, I can do this to a certain extent, and now, yeah, I need an executive coach. How do people know the difference?
Yeah.
Or
So
is it just a
first of
matter
all,
of both? I mean, because it's kind of always
I
a, you know.
I would say it is always both, right? Even if you have a coach, you are developing tools to coach yourself,
Yeah.
right? And I also think it's much more, going back to where we started, about the mindset. The 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 people that I think are the most vibrant, dynamic leaders have just an innate curiosity to learn. They're the ones in the airport. They don't buy the sports magazine, they buy the new 3 steps to being a better listener, or they're always thinking about, how do I up my game as a leader, kind of as a human being. Um, and so they're always coaching themselves. But this book, I think, is really written either for someone who can't afford a coach, or someone who isn't ready to make that commitment but wants to sort of dip their toes in. Or the I could have also written it a little differently, and it could have been a book for coaches who, more
Yes.
coaches getting going,
Great
because
tools for them. Yes.
I wish I'd had a book that said, hey, here's a dozen frameworks that you are going to use a lot if you're an executive coach. Um, yeah, I could have written it that way. And then I think the other way I know people have used it is managers have used it as a tool to sort of say, okay, if I'm supposed to be coaching my folks about these issues, let me sort of update my own operating system on, you know, best practices or frameworks or checklists, so that I can communicate succinctly and clearly about them. And these frameworks give you that ability.
Yes, and a lot of managers don't get the training in how to mentor and
Right,
coach, and so this
right,
is a great tool for them for that.
right.
That's so good. Yeah. What has been, maybe as you've been working with these, what has been sort of, other than we talked about the first two, right, which are cornerstone um,
Yeah.
principles and practices of the values and the mindset. What has been sort of the biggest aha as you've been working with clients with in terms of these frameworks where they go, oh my gosh, that one? Because I know there's certain ones for me that I'll
Mhm.
talk about a bunch of different ones, and there's certain ones that are always stand out for clients.
Yeah. You know, apart from the two I mentioned, I would say one that I come back to over and over is the keys to a successful, 6 keys to a strong team, which is really, I mention him in the book based on Patrick Lencioni's work, Five Behaviors of a Cohesive Team. I love that. I added purpose to it. So nice to be on your podcast that's about purpose based businesses. But I added the element of purpose to his framework and tweaked it in a few other ways. I love that framework because when you have a team, whatever issue comes up or whatever you need to work on you can kind of hang it on that framework. Is it about psychological safety? Oh, that's the bottom of that framework. Is it about how we hold each other accountable? Ah, okay, that's that part of the framework. I find that it gives you a sort of mental model to really think about anything that comes up in the team, and it gives you a way to think about it and connect the dots to other behaviors and practices.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, there is so much in your book. I mean, it's hard to pick one, and that's a great one there. But there's so many. I mean, I lost count of how many frameworks you have. I pulled
Yeah,
some
I
of them.
know.
I was like,
I know. I
I'm
know.
like, wow. Um, as we wrap up, what are some final
Yeah.
thoughts for purpose-driven entrepreneurs, founders that are listening, that
Yeah.
are in this, like, I want to grow, I want to move forward fast, and
Yeah.
you know what? I think I might have ADHD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do I start, and
Yeah.
what would you tell them to help them
Yeah.
move forward? Something
I'm
they can apply right now.
blanking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm blanking on the name. I shouldn't be of the guy who was the founder of Bonobos.
Hmm.
Um, anyways, interesting guy, great business model that he was the founder of. And I saw him speak at a VC conference, and it was beautiful. I actually wrote an article about it. He basically said, if you're a founder, get a coach. And now he said coach or therapist. I kind of okay, I'll go with that. But you need someone action oriented. But I thought to myself, I agree. I mean, I if you're a founder, you need a coach. And you need a coach not because there's something wrong, but because you need an objective outside view who they don't have to know your business, but they are going to be an honest mirror reflecting back on you. They are going to be your cheerleader, and they are a professional reframer. Kind of exactly what we talked about earlier, that spectator actor. And I think this is so important for a founder because being a founder is all about scaling, right? And scaling is all about delegating and letting go. And that is very hard. And I don't even mean just you delegating it as an individual, but you have to let go of people too, because most people that start with you aren't going to be the right people to scale. And there is just such a constant amount of both professional, strategic, operational, and emotional churn. You need a thought partner. You need a sounding board. Everybody does.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, thank you, Antonia. I appreciate it. I learned a lot. I love these kinds of conversations and
Yeah,
talking
so do
about
I.
root, causes and so forth and transformation. And to your point, your last point about founders, I forget who it was in this show. They said something to the effect of, it was so good. Um, Unfortunately, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was good. They said, when you're a when you're a leader and you have this aha, you're the last to know, like about their own behavior, right? You're the
Yeah.
last to know because everybody in the team already recognizes it. And and that's where that sounding board, somebody who can give you that honest feedback and mirror you and kind of say, hey, and do it in a safe environment. It's important to have, of
Yeah.
course, somebody that
Safe.
you feel
Yeah.
safe with, psychologically safe as a leader to share what's going on, your challenges, because you're as a founder, you're leader of any type. You've got people looking up to you, and a lot of times I find a lot of my clients, they think they need to know it all, right? They need to have all the answers because they're the ones that people come to. And it's like you need to have a place where you can let your hair down and not be the one who's,
Yeah.
I got it all together.
Yeah.
And of course, more
Yeah.
and more people now are really appreciating authentic leadership and transparent leadership, where people, especially through COVID, where leaders are like, you know what? I don't have it all. I have no idea. We've never been through a pandemic before. So let's figure it out together. And that's very powerful. But to have support to help them do that is key. So, yeah, I'm going to encourage our listeners to get a copy of your book, Coach Yourself, available
Yeah.
everywhere books are sold. And then we'll make sure your website, of course, and all your social handles are in the show notes so that they can
Beautiful.
connect with you, and maybe they're looking to hire a coach, and you'd be the right fit for that. So yeah, again, thank you. I so appreciate you being here, and it's the kind of conversations I like having. So it's good.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. It's just flowed. It's been really a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Time flies. It totally does. So yes, yes. And I always say to our listeners, leaders of transformation take action. And so, you can listen to podcasts. I love podcasts. I obviously we're on 500 episodes now. Um,
Unbelievable.
it's great. Podcast on itself, information on its own isn't going to do you any good. It's when you start to apply that information, that's where transformation happens. And so I encourage you to take something, if only one thing that would make it worthwhile, is take something that you learned here today from what we talked about and apply it today,
I
tonight,
love that.
tomorrow.
I love that.
That's where, we'd love to hear what that is for you, the one thing, what that is for you. And you can find us, of course, on our website, leadersoftransformation.com. You can, comment, of course, on our social media posts and so forth. And we'd love to hear what's that one thing for you, what you're committed to applying, and how this has made a difference for you. So anyway, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Again, Antonia, thank you for being here. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of the Leaders of Transformation. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nicole.
My pleasure.